Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Reginald J, President of Foundation of the World, and you are here for our weekly webinar series, also known as the Next Level Webinar. We're going to get started with a short video as we get everyone coming into the webinar right now. This short video is about one of our programs we have in Haiti, our PAC program, which is our technological program that we use to bring technology to different groups around the world, starting with Haiti. They're also part of our 10-10-10 initiative, which is what we are trying to reach 10,000 students in 10 years across 10 different technologies, starting with Cisco. So guys, we're going to play the video for you now. We hope you enjoy it, and we'll get started with the session shortly after.
Haiti has been decimated by earthquakes,
corruption and instability.
But we are strong and we have hope.
There's a saying, to go fast, go alone, to go far, go together, and we choose to go together.
Cisco employees join Nonprofit Foundation of the World to teach young leaders like me in Haiti about technology.
Between Haiti's innovative minds and its tech future, there's a bridge. Cisco, the bridge to possible.
That wonderful video is a real testament to what we're trying to do here at Foundation of the World, which is to bring technology and education to underprivileged students around the world, from Haiti to here in the United States. And it's my pleasure to introduce you guys to Karen McDonald. Karen McDonald is joining us from Cisco Systems. She's a leader. She's a manager. She's a business kick-ass boss. She's absolutely around the world, and we'll begin to her presentation shortly. Karen has been with Cisco for over, how long has it been, Karen?
12 years. 12
years. Oh my gosh, absolutely incredible. 12 years. So guys, I'm gonna let Karen go right into it. I'm gonna let her get started. For those who, just to give you some quick housekeeping, on the right-hand side of your screen, if you're joining us, you will see that there is a chat button. Over there is where you can post your questions, and throughout the presentations, we will stop intermittently to check your questions for Karen. Also, you'll see the slides will pop up on your screen in front of you, so you guys will be able to pop up any, you'll be able to see the slides from that perspective. Lastly, there will be polls during this presentation because Karen wants to talk to you and ask questions. So please respond to those polls with however you want to respond, and Karen is going to talk to those polls later on. And last but not least, you can speak, you can ask or talk to Karen yourself. There is a speak button. If you want to speak and say something to Karen, please click the speak button. On the speak button, you're going to make a request, and I will let you in, and you'll be able to talk to Karen. Okay? So Karen, let's go through your presentation.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Reggie. Thank you so much. So we will jump right in. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to even allow me to share on today. Building a brand is something that I'm passionate about. So today we're going to talk about what is a brand. Oftentimes people don't understand what a brand is. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how to go about creating our personal brands, those steps to building the brand, and then the what next, right? There will be some action items for us to take, for us all to take as we leave here on today. And of course, we always leave room for questions and answers. So before we jump right in, I'd love for us to have our first poll. And this poll is just to see what everyone thinks a brand is. Is it who you are, your reputation, your story, or all of the above? So there is a poll, and if you click polls and provide your answers there.
As we're getting some answers coming in, Karen. Looks like the overwhelming majority are picking one answer. Interesting. Oh, wait. We're getting some variances. Let's see. So guys, be sure to check the poll. The poll is open for the next minute. Karen asked a question. What is a brand? Is it who you are, your reputation, your story, or all of the above. All right, the poll is still open. We have 30 seconds left on the poll. Karen, is this a trick question? Are you trying to trick the people out there?
Reggie, you know me too well. You know me too well.
All right, guys, 10 more seconds on the poll. And Karen, we've closed the poll and we have 94% of the people have selected all of the above. 5% has selected your story. So, what it is, Karen?
It really is all of the above, because your brand is all about who you are. It's about your reputation. It's about your story. It's about how you show up. So we're going to dig right into that. Before we do, when we think about brand, oftentimes people think about companies. We have these logos here. I know for me, Amazon, my husband is probably so tired of Amazon showing up at my house. Or Delta, I miss, because of COVID, I miss being able to jump on the plane, right?
Yeah.
But these are brands that a lot of us on this call, we are familiar with. And when we think about brands and we think about company brands, we think about how certain companies are set above the competition. Well, it's the same thing with our personal brands. How do we set ourselves apart from other people? How do we set ourselves apart from other students? For those of us on the call that are in school, how do we set ourselves apart from our colleagues? For those of us that are professionals and working full time. So if I go to the next slide, these are some familiar faces. Some familiar faces, depending on where you are in your life. Like I said, I know we have some people on this call that may be in middle school all the way up to professionals. So some of these faces will resonate to others, where some may not. But each one of these individuals, they all have some sort of brand, whether that brand is good or that brand is perceived as bad. There's a brand associated to each one of these individuals. Like, I mean, Beyonce, she's just fierce, right? I mean, what do you think about, Reggie, when you see Beyonce?
Bow down to the queen. Bow down to the queen. That's what I know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the same way that we see these famous people and their brand, if we look over to the far right, where you see you have a brand also. Each and every one of us on this call, we have a brand, whether you know it or not, whether you've been intentional on actually developing it, we all have a brand. So what is a brand? We talked about it already. We talked about how it is your story, it's your reputation. All of that goes into your brand. It's how we show up. It's our appearance. It's our verbal communication. It's our physical communication. It's all of those things. It's our passion. It's the skill set that we have. So your education, any certifications, all of that plays into your brand. Your values play into your brand. And so these are things that we consider as we intentionally start building our personal brand. So let's talk about the reasons why we should create a personal brand. I know for me, building a network is key, right? I mean, and I know for you as well, Reggie, right? I mean, at Cisco, where we are today, I think a lot of it is because of our networks. Would you not agree?
I agree 100%. Your network is your net worth, as they like to say.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. So building our brand is important to help us build our network. People, they are attracted to you based on your brand, or they don't want any parts of you based on your brand.
True.
It's also a way to differentiate ourselves from the competition. So if, for example, you're in school and you want your professor to pick you for the teacher's assistant, your brand is what's going to help differentiate you from someone else in your class. The same for professionals, working professionals. What's going to differentiate you from your colleagues when it comes time for your promotion or it comes time for that next role is your brand. Your brand also helps to highlight your strength. One thing to keep in mind is when we're not in the room, our brand can speak for us. So whatever your strengths are, your brand should highlight that. Your brand should be able to demonstrate those strengths. Your brand also is a way to establish trust. One thing that we'll talk about is your brand should be authentic, and being your authentic self helps lay that foundation for trust. If, for example, you're building a brand and it's a facade of who you really are, you won't be able to establish trust. Your brand also helps you with positioning, and it helps you to demonstrate value. So now we're going to kind of jump right into some of the steps to building a personal brand. And I've outlined the steps here, and we're going to go in more detail about them. But we're going to talk about performing a self-evaluation, establishing what you want to be known for, seeking feedback from others, auditing your online presence, and then rebranding as needed. I'm going to jump right in.
They're going to have to pay you for this, Karen. They're going to have to pay you for this.
They're going to have to pay me for this? I don't know, Reggie. Look, I'm still learning from you.
Let's do it. I'm excited to see it. I know the people are excited to see it. So what's the first step? How does the first step actually work?
Okay, so the first step is all about knowing thyself. You must know thyself. Performing a self-evaluation is key, because if you don't know yourself, how will anyone else know you? So knowing thyself, or just doing some self-evaluation and taking a look within, is a very important part and should be the first part of building that brand. Knowing yourself also gives you an opportunity to understand, what's the value that I currently bring? How do I show up? Do I show up as a positive person? Do I show up as a Debbie Downer all the time? Do I show up as a negative person? How do I show up? Even from your appearance, right? Do I show up, I'm in a collared shirt today, but do I most of the time show up in a t-shirt and jeans? And that's okay if that's what I want my brand to be. But for me, that's not how I want my brand to be, right? So simple things like that. But you must take a self-evaluation to understand where you currently are, how you're showing up, the value you bring, the things you're passionate about. Does that make sense to you, Reggie?
I think that makes perfect sense. And that speaks to that authenticity that you were talking about. If it's not authentic, it's not good. If it's not good, it's not a brand. So
there you go. There you go. So one of the things that we have at Cisco is the Strength Finders tool, right? And so I just pulled this as an example of another way to know yourself, right? So taking like the Myers-Briggs, and I said Strength Finder, but it's actually the Standout Assessment tool. But the Standout Assessment or the Strength Finders, any one of those tools is a great way to understand a little bit more about yourself, right? So for me, when I took the Standout Assessment and I showed up as a teacher stimulator, and I looked at some of the characteristics of teacher and some of the characteristics of a stimulator, it was spot on basically about the way I want to show up, right? So if you look at the stimulator, for example, instinctively a positive person, I always want to show up as positive. Negative people bring me down. So I'm really conscious of not being negative myself. And so I want my brand to demonstrate that positivity. Along the same lines, the next bullet, takes necessary steps to build energy. That's definitely me. I'm one that if I do see people that are down or I see people in a negative space, I like to facilitate that change and bring them up and bring their energy up, bring them to a place where they can see, the positive side of what's going on, right? So, but I took the time to understand myself and understand the way I show up based on my strengths. I know, Reggie, you've gone through the standout assessment as well. And did you use any of that information to build your personal brand?
Oh, for sure. I've added into my brand statement. I typically try to include it, at least some of the passages that's written about me in different areas of my leadership deck that I've created, that I usually give out to people whenever I meet them for the first time. And it really fits with, where you're going. You can find it on my LinkedIn. So it's a great way for you to not only figure out yourself, but also to kind of get your personal brand started. I think one hard part for people is trying to figure out what to say. Those assessments are just like chock full of things that you can just take and pull and put in your personal brand.
Exactly. You are spot on, Reggie. And so I always encourage people to take a deeper dive into those assessments, especially if you're going through the process of finding yourself or knowing yourself, just to get an understanding of how you show up. The next thing you want to do when you're building your personal brand is understand what you want to be known for. How do you want people to see you? Right? I talked about in the previous slide how I want people to view me as positive. So that's something I want to be known for. I don't want, if someone said, yeah, that Karen McDonald, she is the most negative person that you could ever meet. People that know me, they would know that that's not true. So the positivity, that's part of my brand. When you're thinking about what you want to be known for, just what are your values? What values do you have? And your values, can be anything from, I'm passionate about giving back, right? Your values can be anything that is important to you, but you want to be able to pull that in as part of your personal brand. What makes you happy? What makes you happy should be absolutely a part of your brand. Because if it's something that does not make you happy, you shouldn't be doing it. You should not be doing it. And so if you think that the only way to success is to include something in your brand that you don't really agree with, that you don't really feel that is actually a part of you, then you're not actually building your brand correctly. Again, it should be something that makes you happy. So we're going to have another poll. As you can see, I love polls. And this one is all about how others see you. So, how others see me is not important. And this is related to building your brand, by the way. So, how others see you is not important. Either you agree, and that's a yes, or you don't agree, and that's a no. And again, this is related to building your brand.
So guys, we've opened the poll. The poll will be open for the next 50 seconds or so. Like Karen said, the poll is located on the right-hand side of your screen. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll be able to select either yes or no on the question, how others see me is not important. Karen, I know you've been talking about branding for a while. What by far is your favorite part about creating your brand or helping other people create their brand?
Oh my goodness. My favorite part. Wow. I like it all. But I think for me, just the self-assessments, I go through rebranding often, right? I just want to, and we'll kind of talk about that later in the presentation, but I often want to make sure that my brand is spot on with where I want to be. I'm really intentional, and I always share with people, you must be intentional when you're building your brand. But I guess for me, my most favorite part is just the self awareness and ensuring I understand who I am, where I want to be, how I want to be, how I want to show up.
That's great. And what's even more great is that the poll is complete and we have 90% of people saying no, how others see me is not important. And we have 10% saying yes, how others see me is not important.
So, how others see you as it relates to your brand is important. And what I want to say about that is, so the correct answer, if we, are using correct answers, would be no, because the statement says how others see me is not important. Actually, it is important. So the correct answer is no. How others see us actually plays into how we develop our brands. So one thing that I often share with people, a good way to assess how you show up and how others see you, is a website, 7wordsaboutme.com. That website, you can go to that website and register for free. This is free, guys. It's a free resource. Go to that website, register, and you can anonymously, or well, you know who you're sending it to, but you can send the link to several different people. I always encourage you to send it to at least 10 people. Don't just send it to 2, because then you know who the 2 people, which 2 people responded, right? But send it to 10 different people at least. And it gives them an opportunity to be candid about how you show up. And they just input words about you. And it's anonymous, meaning you know who you sent it to, but when they respond, you don't know who responded. You don't know. I mean, like all 10 could still respond, but you don't know who said what. And I'll just say, don't try to figure it out either. But it's a great way to understand how you show up to other people, because oftentimes as we are working on our personal brand, we don't necessarily understand how we show up to others. And so having that candid feedback is important. So this was my word tree from like 2 years ago. It's old. I need to do this again with my current peers and leaders. But this was a word tree that I did based on the feedback that I received. I sent it to a lot of people. And so some of the things that showed up, I mean, energetic, that's part of my brand. I'd like to be known as energetic. I like to be known as driven. I like to be known as professional. And so the things that showed up when when I asked for the feedback are things that I use to help develop my brand. So 7wordsaboutme.com. I encourage everyone to go to that website and then start getting feedback from other people about the way you show up. So the next step is auditing your online presence. So let's talk about that for a moment, Reggie. Have you ever seen someone that, I mean, whether in school or at work, their brand is just phenomenal, right? They're this phenomenal person, but then you see them online and their online presence is like, whoa. Like, I can't believe, like, I have respect for this person and they're online doing X, Y, Z. Has that ever happened to you, Reggie? Have you ever experienced something like that?
Yep.
So our online presence is just as important to our brand as our physical presence. The way you show up online can actually make or break a whole lot of things. So just like you want to be your authentic self, in person, you want to be your authentic self online as well. I get, social media, there's a lot of expression that takes place, a lot of expression that takes place on social media. But if your brand is, one way, and then on social media, you're out there, let's just say your brand, for example, is you're just like professional, and part of your brand, um, I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, I know one. I have some people that I followed in the past on social media, and their brand was just like they were cursing and this, I mean, just not what I wanted to be associated with, right? Every other word was a curse word, and but yet knowing that person face to face, and the brand that they portrayed was one of just like this professional, like self-righteous person. And so am I saying that on social media, you can't be your total self? No, I'm not saying that. You should be yourself, but that same self should be the same self that you are as part of your physical interactions, right? So be authentic, be your authentic self, but you also want to be social and engaging. That's what social media is all about. So if you're on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, what have you, and you're not engaging with others, all you're doing is posting, you're not going to build your online presence that way. And then the last point about auditing your online presence, just be mindful of how it impacts your overall brand. That just kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about, just if your brand online does not match the brand that you portray when everyone sees you physically. So I'm going to pause right there. Reggie, any questions for me about online presence?
Yes, we do. So one of the questions we have is really focused on the question of, well, there are certain brand qualities that are looked for when you're in a work environment or a corporate environment. And there's certain qualities that you hold at home or in the comfort of your friends and family. And unfortunately, you can't bring the same thing you have at home into work. So how do you find that balance of showing or revealing different parts of yourself through your brand?
Awesome. That is a really good question. And so for me, so I always it's a joke, but it's reality. I say I live a double life. What do I mean by that? My professional life is a little bit different than my outside of work life, because my outside of work life is my brand outside of work is all about health and wellness, right? So I brand myself outside of work differently than I brand myself at work. And so as far as like my social media presence and all of that, we'll talk about that, and then how I build the different brands overall. But I have social media specifically for my professional, job at Cisco, and what I do with that, and what I do from a diversity standpoint. And then I have a separate social media for my wellness stuff that I do outside of work. As far as my overall brand, I'm pretty consistent though with the way I show up from character, my personality, and all of that. That's consistent across the board, whether it's Cisco or outside. So I'm being my authentic self both ways, right? So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's how I do it, how I differentiate between the two. And I will go ahead, Reggie.
No, I think that's a fair answer, because I think that's difficult. There's certain societal pressures on us, and a lot of our community is underprivileged, so they're usually disenfranchised or aren't as privileged as others are. So it's difficult for them to go through branding because there's already stereotypes or double standards that they might suffer against. So they're really trying to learn how to navigate between my real self. Some people can't handle it, or they might misunderstand it because it's not something that's familiar or the commonplace in where they work or where they learn. So I think that's a fair answer, that you have to kind of learn how to navigate and learn how to pour enough of your brand in cups that can handle it. So there might be a smaller cup that you can pour some into. There might be a bigger cup where you can pour more. So I think it's a fair answer.
Absolutely. And you know, I know that social media has it's good for some things and for others not so much, right? And so I always share, especially with the students I work with in like middle school and high school, guys, be conscious about what you're posting on social media. Be conscious about the way you show up there, because it can keep you from that scholarship. It can keep you from a particular job. And that social media presence, it's there. That footprint is there. You can delete it all you want to. It's still out there somewhere, right? So just be conscious about that. And you know, it would break my heart when I used to work with one of the local high schools, and it would break my heart when I would see some of my students out there on social media, smoking weed on social media, or on social media, you know, with alcohol and underage drinking and all that, and you're putting it out there on social media. And so, what does that say about your brand? If I'm a hiring manager at a company and I see that information about you, am I likely to hire you, or likely to hire someone that I look at their social media footprint and I don't see all of that? And that's just the reality of it, right? There's some things that just don't need to be on social media. So, and when we think about social media, so LinkedIn is one of those platforms from a professional standpoint that is being used, well used by many of us. And it's one of the first things that a lot of hiring managers and companies, they will go to look at, to learn about you prior to even having a conversation with you, right? It's like, oh yeah, let me go to LinkedIn. Let me go to LinkedIn and see what this person is all about. I had a conversation earlier today, and the individual said, yeah, I knew that about you because I went to your LinkedIn page, right? So again, that social media presence. So one of the tools that I use just to audit my online presence with LinkedIn, and I'm sure there are other tools that are out there for some of the other social media platforms, but there is a tool, and we have the link in the presentation, and we will have it for you with the resources. But this tool actually will give you a snapshot of your, they call it your social selling dashboard. So how you are showing up on LinkedIn, how you rank, you know, and areas that you do well, areas for improvement. So that's another way to audit your social media presence and understand how you're showing up on LinkedIn, and how other people are viewing your actual profile. And that's just like the second page of what that tool spits out in regards to your profile. Have you done this assessment on your LinkedIn profile yet, Reggie?
I have not. I'm literally trying to type it in right now on my phone. I've never done.
Let me go back. Let me go back to it so you can.
I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna grab it later. LinkedIn.com/sales/SSI, guys. So if you want to check out your social selling dashboard, you can do so.
Awesome. All right. So the other thing is just rebrand when needed. And so what do I mean by this? We should all be constantly evaluating our brands. Constantly. It should not be something that is, you know what, I'm complacent. I have my brand. I'm done. We should constantly evaluate where we are. And if we're doing that on a regular basis, then we can make adjustments where it's needed. It's definitely okay to start over. It's not, if you're going through the steps and you assess where you are and where your brand currently is, and you say, I just don't like my brand. I don't like how I show up. It's okay. It's okay to reassess, start over, and switch your brand to one that you actually do like and you like how you show up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important. I mean, I think about when I was fresh in the workforce in my 20s. My brand then, like I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, how did I get the roles that I got? Because it was just,
Oh man.
I mean, that's being real, right? I mean, I had a chip on my shoulder and I had that neck rolling attitude. It's just bad, right? I've come a long way. I'll just say that. I've come a long way. And so evaluating your brand is an important piece of just making sure you're where you want to be.
And Karen, I think it's important to note that having someone like you or others in our professional development series providing that guidance and that insight into your experiences, but also these topics from building your brand and to others, that this is important. These are students and the youth and the next leaders of tomorrow looking at you and saying that I'm coming in my 20s. Oh, Karen said not to do that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Or maybe I should look at my brand like, these lessons are timeless.
Thank you for that, Reggie. And, one thing that is hard for a lot of people is to receive constructive feedback.
Mm.
If someone shares with me, hey, Karen, look, here's some feedback. This is how you show up. I'm going to take that information, and especially if I'm hearing it from more than one source, I'm going to take that information and I'm going to evaluate it, and I'm going to work on, if it's something that I'm like, no, I don't want to show up like that, then I'm going to work on changing it. Now, if it's something that I'm like, yeah, that's how I want to show up. Then
spot on.
right, exactly. Glad you see that, right? But we should constantly evaluate where we are and take the constructive feedback and do what's necessary to get to, where we want to be. All right. So I'm going to go back first. Do we have any questions? I feel like I'm just talking.
Oh,
And
no.
not
Let's see what questions we have. Okay. What is the role a mentor can play in branding? That's a question that we have.
That's a great question. So as a mentor, and I don't know if the person asked because they're a mentor or because they have a mentor, but as a mentor, one of the things that we can do with the people that we mentor is provide that constructive feedback, provide the information about how they show up. So, again, they may not be aware, right? They may not be aware of how they're showing up. They may not be aware of how others perceive them. I remember early in my in my Cisco career, I was meeting with a mentor, and again, I told you in my 20s how I was, anyway. So I was meeting with a mentor, and he stopped me and he said, Karen, do you realize he said, you're really passionate about things, and when you're really passionate, do you realize that you flutter your eyes? And I was like, what? He said, I can always tell when you're talking about a subject that you're passionate about because the way you flutter your eyes. And so from that point on, I was more conscious about my facial expressions, how I would flutter my eyes, how I would do certain things, because my mentor pointed that out to me. So as a mentor, we can help bring things to light that are the people that we're mentoring may not actually see. We can help offer that, again, constructive feedback. We can also help individuals as they are crafting their brand statement, if they're putting together a brand statement, but just ensuring as a mentor that we are there and giving them the reality that we actually see. Because again, sometimes we cannot see things for ourselves.
Very true.
Even something as simple as I shared with someone that I was mentoring, just, I saw something that they had on social media, and I just brought it up in one of our meetings, like, listen, you may want to take that down because, and I gave them the reasons why. And so it was up to them whether or not they decided to take it down, and they did. But, at the end of the day, as mentors, we provide the information, and it's up to the individuals as to whether or not they actually use the information we provide.
Thanks for that answer. I think that's a very informed answer. I think someone who not only is a mentee, but also the other mentors in this group can take that. So how often should I try to rebrand myself? Do brands go stale is another question that we have.
So it depends on what your goal is, right? So for example, if, let's say, you're trying to find a new opportunity, and the previous opportunity that you had, your brand did not necessarily go with the new opportunity you're trying to find, then you may need to reevaluate your brand. If let's talk to some of the school age students. So if, for example, you are you're currently a computer science major, but you're wanting to switch over to history, your brand as a computer science major may have been different than your brand as a history major. And so you would need to reevaluate that to ensure that the brands match. So again, it depends on what your goal is. It depends on the audience. It's a lot of depending factors, but I'm constantly reassessing my brand. And when I say constantly, I'm constantly, I mean, at least every 3 to 6 months, I'm reevaluating, okay, how am I showing up? How can I do things differently? What can I do to improve my brand?
We have another question. When you think of branding, who comes to mind as excellent examples of personal branding on social media? What differentiates them from the rest?
Excellent examples of branding on social media. Can I start with a not so excellent example? No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, sometimes we have to show off the bad ones, and that gives you an idea of just don't do that.
Okay, I'm just gonna say,
I can give you one if you're willing to offer. I think The Rock is a great example of how he comes up on social media. I think he really curates and tries to create that authentic feel of a man, the people's champ. He really tries to show his people's champ and inspiring people to do more through his $6 productions and all of those things. And it's really consistent across the board. He's funny, charismatic. So I think that's a great way of how he comes about. And he's rebranded over the years. He went from just being a wrestler to now he was kind of like a low-key actor, and now he became this big Hollywood actor, and now he's trying to be like this leader in the community and working out. So I think that's a very good example of someone who really took their personal brand under their control, and what really separates him is the consistency, the attention to detail, the authenticity. Like when you watch The Rock, or another one is Kevin Hart, those people really come about in a way that really hits you. And I could probably list off many. It just
Michelle Obama, I think, is a good one. Her social
yeah,
media presence, her online presence,
she's always uplifting other people, which is her brand. She wants to
her
uplift
brand.
others. So
Exactly.
I think those are some
Exactly.
good examples. And we have one more question. Can our brand influence the people who accept to mentor us?
Yes. The answer is yes. And so what do I mean by that? So um your brand, again, the way you show up with your brand, someone that's a mentor they may be online just looking, and they may actually come to you, right? Because they noticed you online, they notice how you show up, whether it's at school or at work. They've noticed these things, and they actually want to mentor you because they respect, appreciate how you show up, how your brand shows up. And so the answer is yes. And that mentor may also end up becoming a sponsor for you, someone that speaks for you when you're not in the room, someone that can advocate for you because they truly, truly like your brand.
I think that answers the question. And that was the last of our questions. So take us home, Karen. I know we have a couple more slides left, but we're almost at the end of our time together, which, you know, I'd always hate to see you go, but you always provide us with so much wisdom, especially when you and I conversate. And I'm happy that our community has been able to be blessed with your knowledge and your know-how and your grace. So I'm really excited to see us take us home.
All right, Reggie. Well, thank you. And, I love our conversations as well. You are always a breath of fresh air, and your brand, you always exhibit your brand in all things that you do. So thank you. So, what next? What next? I gave you some steps for building your brand and rebuilding your brand. So, follow the steps. Follow the steps. It does not matter where you are in the process. If you're just beginning to work on your brand, or if you're someone that you're like me, you're kind of seasoned, you've been around for a while, and you just need to rebrand yourself. Just make sure you follow the steps to build your brand. And then be intentional. You want to be intentional about it. It should not be um, like you leave this webinar and you say, oh, okay, she said rebuild your brand. I'm just going to see how I show up and go from there. No, be intentional about building your brand by following the steps that were outlined. Because again, the brand is your story, it's your reputation, right? It is how when people hear your name or they see your picture, it's how they think about you. So you want to be intentional about building that brand. And then use the tools that I provided to make sure your brand on social media matches how you want others to see you, and it matches how your brand shows up physically. And then I just have a couple of different resources here for you to use.
And we're going to share that with the group. I think they'll be very, very appreciative of all your resources.
Awesome. So any last questions? That's all I had. I know it was short and condensed, but the main
No,
thing
I think you
is
hit everything. And looking in the Q&A section, we don't have any more questions, but I do have a question for you, Karen.
okay.
How can everyone out there connect with you and continue this conversation about building their brand?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, and that was on the first slide. I'm going to bring up the lecture slide just so you guys have my contact information. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So if you shoot me a message there on LinkedIn, we'll be able to connect.
All right. No, yeah, right there. I will
right there.
move you out of the way so they can see
Awesome.
you on
Awesome.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as well. And you know what? One thing I was going to say when the question came up about examples of someone on social media that does a good job with their brand. President Trump does a good job with his brand. I'll just say that. I think his brand, on what he tweets and what he says, is how he wants to show up.
No,
And his brand is consistent.
I would say that. So, guys, please join me in thanking Karen for joining us this evening for our next level webinar series. For her to speak about building her personal brand, which I think all of you guys can attest to is coming off very well, and she's doing a killer job with that. We ask that you guys follow us on social media for our personal brand. You can find Foundation of the World on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as on YouTube, where you'll find our different videos about this event. Her replay of this, as well as her slides, will be going up on foundationoftheworld.org. You'll find it under the Next Level webinar series, where you'll be able to follow up and click on the links and the resources. We do have more webinars for you guys in the future. The webinar series is 9 webinars in total. This was webinar number 4. So we have 5 more starting next week with Building Your Tech Resume with Tish Scarborough. That's a really exciting one for all of those in tech who are having trouble putting together their experiences on paper. This is really going to be very good for you guys. And look, we have a video to send you guys out, the same video we had in the beginning. We thank you guys for joining us this evening. And as always, we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Haiti has been decimated by earthquakes.
Corruption and instability.
But we are strong and we have hope.
There's a saying, to go fast, go alone. To go far, go together. And we choose to go together.
Cisco employees join Nonprofit Foundation of the World to teach young leaders like me in Haiti about technology.
Between Haiti's innovative mind and its tech future, there's a bridge. Cisco, the bridge to possible.